Hi, I'm Mitch,
And I'm Todd.
and we are the Grizzled Geeks. This week we talk about
Space mining gets a boost.
Todd rants about auto inspections,
Cards Against Humanity is digging a hole for Black Friday.
Ford prepares for a future beyond car ownership,
U.S. government releases official guides for smart guns.
Tesla runs an entire island on solar power,
Fender guitar app syncs wirelessly with amplifier.
Firefly's Shepard sadly dies at 71,
No Man's Sky has started talking again.
Star Citizen sharing its production schedule,
And spoiler talk, Westworld and Black Mirror.
Alright. So let's go ahead and get started. You added the article about space mining, so why don't you kick it off?
Space mining. So I find this to be a little bit irony in here as I thought about what I'd written, but Luxembourg passed a new law that allows private companies to keep their gotten gains from the things that they harvest from space. So it allows them, if they go out and they do mining and they get something, I guess as long as they're taking off under a Luxembourg flag, they get to keep whatever they find out there. And I think before we've talked on the show about how much I like the show The Expanse and how much like people think of Star Trek as sort of being a template or a blueprint for the future of space travel and humanity. I think that The Expanse could be something more near term and more realistic for what we could really look like in 100 years or so. Um, Companies right now are already in place. They're starting up, like Planetary Resources and Deep Space Industries, DSI. And these are two real companies with quite a few big names in them. Planetary Resources has a huge list of people with PhDs and business leaders and investors, including Richard Branson and Ross Perot Jr. And Deep Space Industries might not have the same name recognition on their staff, but as you look at the resumes of some of the people that they have there, these are pretty serious people who've done a vast array of things in science, including the Mir space station. So, and here's the irony part to me, they're actually partnered with the Luxembourg government that we mentioned in the story already. They're launching a small nanocraft, they call it, to do scientific study of a near-Earth object, and the name of the mission is Prospector X. So you're seeing these companies start to realize there's potential, there's gold in them their hills being floating around out in outer space. I looked at a list of on the Wikipedia of 10 celestial objects that have sort of been cataloged, and their value is estimated at a combined over $6 trillion in precious metals, made up mostly of nickel, platinum, cobalt, aluminum, magnesium, and iron. So there's stuff out there to be mined, there's money to be made, and now the companies are getting on board. So you're seeing laws being passed, you're seeing us move in that direction, and it's a really exciting time if you're really into space exploration.
Well, and so about the laws, I guess all they have to really do is make sure that they've registered ahead of time, um, and then declared their intent, and as long as they get the authorization and they obey the international laws, then they should be clear, right?
That's the way I read it, which makes sense now why this law would get pushed through with Deep Space Industries partnering with the Luxembourg government. It's sort of a chicken and the egg thing. Did they have the mechanism in place, and they probably came up with an agreement like, look, you need to pass a law that guarantees that we can keep the goods that we get, or that we get to keep a fair share of it. And so, which at first I was like, Luxembourg, why would anybody care what the country of Luxembourg does? Maybe it starts to make sense. You have a small enough country that a large or an important company like Deep Space Industries, you could convince them, hey, let's partner on this. You're a small country, we're a small company getting started, but there is a potential for huge gains for both of us. So it was interesting to me. It got me thinking about that show, The Expanse, and about mining in space, and um, something that I'm more than passing interest in.
Well, I mean, we've got to come up with some kind of standard like this anyway if we want to be able to mine in space without it being just the Wild West. Anybody, hitching their wagon and going out after a, you know, meteor or comet or whatever, so to speak, uh, or somebody just not, going out doing all the work and then a company or country claiming, rights to the resources after they've landed and essentially just driving the companies out of business.
Yeah. The other thing that I like about this is we've talked before about SpaceX and other things. With private industry getting involved here, um, I think you're really going to see that start to drive progress faster than government entities like NASA, which are meticulous and slow because they have to be. They maintain a very strict safety record. I think when private industries get in there, they might not be slowed down by having to have 50 checks in place before you do something.
I don't
Um,
think it's just about safety, though. It's a little bit about bureaucracy, right?
yeah,
NASA has to get its funding from Congress, and if they don't, or if they get a smaller fund, batch than they had originally intended, they have to figure out what sits on the back burner. And they would love to push all of their missions forward, but they can't. They don't have the funding. They don't have the resources to be able to do that. And because it's a government-funded program, it has to go through all of the checks and balances to make sure they're on schedule and they're not overburning, and to make sure that they're not misusing funds for something. And so that eats into time and what you can actually get done. Whereas a CEO has to make sure that they're doing right by their investors, and that's it.
yeah,
As long as they've got the prospect for something like this, and seeing billions or trillions of dollars worth of money floating around in the sky around us, seems like it's doing that. It's looking after the investors' best interest.
Uh, one thing I'll be interested to see is what they're going to do with the materials that they mine. Are they bound for Earth, or are they going to be used in space? And if they are bound for Earth, how do you get them down here in large amounts? I guess all that's to be worked out, but I would think initially they almost would be more useful if you could find a way to use them in space.
Well, I mean, Elon Musk, I'm sure, would love to use those in space. He's talking about building a fleet of rockets to go, out to Mars or around the solar system, and you're going to need materials for that. I don't think that we're really ready to do processing or production in space at this point. But going up there and getting the stuff, um, it's a start.
Yeah. So
Maybe
that's
they just put a big freight container, fill it up, and you know put shielding on the bottom, launch it down, and then have it auto deploy shoots before it hits the ground. I don't know.
that's true, and if you slow it down enough, it doesn't really have to stay intact when it hits the ground if it's just raw metal. But I know a lot of people view all the space exploration and spending money in space as basically pouring money into a giant hole. Speaking of which, should we segue into your Cards Against Humanity story?
So that's a perfect segue into this story. I saw this, and uh, I don't think it's real news or anything like that. Cards Against Humanity, popular card game, a lot of fun if you've ever played it. But they started a crowdfunding page for digging a hole.
Yeah, donate some money and they'll dig. And as more people donate, they just keep digging. No real goal here, nothing in mind there, just dig. As long as you give them money, they'll keep digging a hole. I didn't know what to say about it at the time, except, um, the ultimate smartass gesture, I guess. I know they're trying to make a point about Black Friday and the insanity of things and how people just throw their money away here. We have so much money,
Well, not only
apparently.
Black Friday, but crowdfunding itself, right?
Yeah.
People just throw money at crowdfunding projects, and it's like throwing your money, into a pit. You
Yeah.
hope something comes out of it again, but
Having donated to Star Citizen, I kind of know the feeling on that. And not being able to get it to launch on my computer. Yeah, I feel like I could have sent that money to Cards Against Humanity. At least I'd have a 4 foot deeper hole. But I'm just kidding. I still have high hopes they'll fix my problems, and I can't wait to play that game. So
someday.
someday.
All right. There wasn't much to say about that one, but
No.
so yeah, let's move on. So Ford is had a there was an article I saw from on Engadget. Ford CEO Mark Fields was looking into a future beyond everyone just owning their own cars. So as we get into the whole autonomous vehicle thing, one of the things that I'm looking forward to most about autonomous vehicles is not having to own and maintain my own car anymore. I want to set up a schedule and say I'm leaving for work at 8:15. I need a car to be there, and then I need it to drive me to work, and then I'm gonna come home at 6:30 or something like that, or whatever. I want a car to be there and pick me up and drive me home. I don't
Yeah,
really care what it does during the rest of the time.
I think a lot of people want that. I mean, there are car people, and then there are people who aren't car people. And people who aren't car people are more destination people. They just want to be at their destination. They don't care how they get there. And I think um, that there'll always be both. You're never going to get everybody to agree on anything. But I think right now things have, over the past, I don't know, 60, 80 years since cars have been around, however long that is, have leaned towards the car ownership side of things. You had to have a car to get around. You had to have a car to get to your job. You had to have a car to live. And it's only now where we're starting to really think about building societies where cars optional. And maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that's a good thing for the planet. I myself, I find it a little funny that Ford did that because I've managed to go 30 years without owning a Ford until I bought this Mustang. And it's been a good 30 years of dependable cars compared to the last Mustang I bought, or last Ford I bought. But I'm not going to bash Ford. I love my Mustang. It was worth putting all the bulbs in today that I had to put in. And you made a comment at the top about I was going to rant about auto inspections, but I don't think I will. I'll just say that I replaced all the bulbs on my Mustang. It's fun to work on it, and so I'm good. So I hope that Ford doesn't plan on abandoning building cars just because not everybody's going to own them, and that they'll continue to keep improving their fleet, which I think they actually have done a pretty good job of the last 20 years improving their cars.
Well, you're always going to have a certain percentage of people that want to own their own cars. Um, for whatever reason, you're going to have the Donald Trumps that have to have the gold-plated everything, and nobody's but mine shall sit in this seat. Type of a deal, and he's got the money to be able to do it. You know, More power to him. But for the majority of people, even if you want a luxury ride to and from work or wherever you're going to, you just pay for a different level of a service that you subscribe to. And if you're happy with that service, then you continue to pay for it. If you're not, you find another one that's out there and that's available. I just I don't see the point in having as many vehicles on the road as we do today. That we could have less vehicles on the road, servicing the same number of people if they're not sitting there idle all day in a parking lot.
Yeah, and hell, still waiting for the Hyperloop to get here, sign me up and whoop, me right over to my destination in a couple of minutes. I'll get right on there, as long as I don't get liquefied in the process. But as urban areas grow and spread out, we need to think about new ways of doing transportation, and I think they're looking to the future, so good for them. Um, Move on to the next article. I
Yeah.
must admit this one kind of, I don't know how I missed this in the agenda, but U.S. government releases official guidelines for smart guns. Um, Smart guns, but not smart owners. So what does this mean?
Well, so this is essentially a safety lock. So, extreme examples in cinema, for example, you have Judge Dredd. The judges have their guns ID handprinted for them, and anybody else tries to shoot their guns, you know, it backfires, it electrocutes them, or explodes, or something like that. So that's an extreme example. But the idea of a smart gun is somebody can't pick up your gun and use it against you, or someone can't find the gun laying around, child finding the gun laying around the house, pick it up and accidentally shoot themselves or their friend whenever they're playing cops and robbers, something along those lines. That's that's what they're going for here. And um, I have been a gun user in the past. Um, I don't have any problems with the right to bear arms or anything like that. I'm not anti NRA or anything like that. But I always want to see responsible gun ownership. I don't see the need to have a fully automatic weapon for hunting big game, and I want to see any gun that anyone buys, the owner be responsible and know how to use the weapon, um, and then to be responsible to keep the weapon out of bad people's or the wrong people's hands. And so this seems like a step in the right direction for that. And maybe that will finally allow us to strike a balance between um, people that are afraid the government's going to take our guns away, and people that think that nobody really needs a gun because they cause more harm than good.
I think this is just like the previous story. I think there's a huge parallel here. About half the people will be for smart guns, and about the other half are just going to want their same old dumb guns. And you can't force everybody to adopt any system, but the people who want to buy smart guns because they have children in the house, make it available to them, and there's an extra safety precaution in there. But I don't think you should ever force somebody to have to spend the extra money on a smart gun, because then that's going to be a fairly expensive technology, so it's going to eliminate the poor from being able to defend themselves. And
I think
it,
initially it'll be more expensive, but you know, if there's one thing that we sell a lot in this country, it's guns, and mass production means lowering cost of the technology. It will get cheap.
hell,
It'll get cheap enough that
even before this election, there were 100 million gun owners, and at the rate the guns were selling over the last 3 months leading up to the election, I can't imagine how many hundreds of millions of gun owners there are in the country now. Can't be more
I
than
know.
300, but it's probably close to that. Uh, but
So
I'm
yeah,
all in. I like the idea of having smarter gun safes too. I'm a big fan of everyone who owns a firearm should have a gun safe in their house that they keep all their guns in, that is either password protected or DNA protected or eyeball protected or whatever, retina scanner. Just keep the guns away from the kids. That's every time I pick up a story and read about some kid shooting their friend or their brother accidentally, it breaks my heart. So, all right. So you want to jump on to Tesla running Fantasy Island on solar power?
sure. Yeah, and this was a fun story. So just say right off from the beginning, it's not something that you could do everywhere. It's not they've done it on this one island. They're just going to slowly roll it out across the U.S. and everyone's going to be solar in the next 10 years or something like that. So there's this island in American Samoa. Uh,
What's the name of that
it's
island?
Tau. I'm,
Tau.
I'm guessing on this one. Uh, so they went out and they got 60 of the Tesla power packs and they covered a large section of land in solar panels from Sun City, and they did it to provide power for their small island, uh, which I believe, what's the article say, around 400, 600 residents. So 600 residents, they don't have any way to get power, uh, from off of the island, so they have to generate their own power. Previous to this, they were using diesel generators, and they would burn 300 gallons of fuel per day, uh, and on at times the ship hasn't come in to bring more diesel. They would either have to ration electricity or just go without electricity for periods of time. With this, they're self-sufficient. They don't have to spend the money long term on the diesel fuel anymore. Uh, they still have to maintain the power packs and solar panels and all that kind of stuff, and they had to pay for 60 of these Tesla power packs, which are not cheap. But compared to 300 gallons of diesel a day, I'm sure they're saving in the long run.
I just can't get the image of Elon Musk in a white suit walking around going, "Smiles, everyone, smiles." Zip lane. I think it's a great story. If more islands like that start converting over to electrical or to solar power, that would be great. To electric power, to solar power, as well as small towns in the U.S. and other places that get a lot of sunlight. We have a lot of different methods of alternative fuel we can use. I believe we should use them everywhere we can to preserve the fossil fuel for as long as we can, because if I know anything about human beings, that's when the fuel starts running out, we will start killing each other for what's left of it. So
Without a doubt.
let's
So
postpone that as long as possible.
yeah, the way they've got this set up with the power packs and the grid that they've got on the island, they have it set up to where they store about 3 days worth of electricity. So even if they have a cloudy day or a big storm that passes through, they can still reliably have electricity. So it's not perfect conditions for everyone, but a system similar to this or
Now, if they had
whatever
some
could be
windmills,
used.
when those storms come a rolling through, they'd have an alternate fuel source that even works at night. Now
They have
they'll,
those
you'll,
windmills can do hurricane force winds.
and you may slice up a few birds of paradise along the way, but
Yeah,
Well, the other one they can do is it's a new technology where you use waves, and you use
yeah.
I guess like a ratcheting effect under the water to let the wave motion move these um, turbines underwater and generate electricity that way as well. So,
Yeah, they're anchored, and it just moves up and down with the waves.
yeah. So I mean that's there are lots of technologies out there, and it's nice to see them start to become real and start to be adopted with practical use. And once again, that's one of the great things about the economic engine, companies like Tesla driving change like this. It's not pie in the sky like a lot of universities. You'll hear about these great things they come up with at universities. We can do this, this, and this. They never go anywhere. Universities are there to teach, but they don't really ever put things to market. So
Well,
it's companies that bringing things to market finally it speeds things up. You find
they don't
the
really have a vehicle to bring things to market either.
yeah.
And they don't really care about that part of it either. They're interested in research. Um, I've got guys that I work with that are interested in learning the new thing, and once they learn enough about it, they either hand it off to somebody else, or whatever the project they're working on just sort of dies on the vine if somebody doesn't pick it up. And
Yeah,
it's the same kind of mentality.
I think we had a discussion one time, I think, about patent laws and things like that. And I'm not anti-university. I love advancing all thoughts and ideas and new discoveries of science. It just, these things need to be able to get to the market. And one of the things I hate is when a company sees a new technology or a new innovation as a competitor, so they purchase the patent rights to it and they stick it on a shelf and you never see it again.
Yeah.
I'd like to see the patent laws change to where you have that patent for a certain amount of time to produce it to the open market, or you lose it. And
Instead of just sitting on it.
instead of just sitting on it, use it or lose it. Make it available to the people, or you have to give it
I've
up.
heard if you don't use it, you lose it.
I think I've heard that as well. It's I think I've lived that. I don't use it and I've lost it, along with the thread of this conversation. So, should we move on and leave Fantasy Island behind us and move on to Fender's guitar amps? Will sync
Sure.
wirelessly.
So yeah, I found this article based on a conversation we had with Tim, who uh, he's still alive, folks, but he's not with us right now.
He's locked
Uh,
in the basement.
he's been a bad boy, and we'll let him out when he's good again. Uh, but he had mentioned with regards to Apple dropping the headphone jack on the phone, that he uses that headphone input for some of his guitar apps that he has for his guitars. And so, yeah, at the time I thought, oh well, they'll figure out something for that. And this seems like the next step. That Apple seems to be going for Bluetooth. Our companies seem to be going away from having that headphone jack in the phone or in the iPad or whatever, and going towards Bluetooth. And so it looks like Fender's just sort of jumped the gun and went all in.
This makes perfect sense because as a guitarist, I can tell you, I've played around with all kinds of different software and amplifiers and things like that. Um, if you think about the advancement of computers, you're never going to be able to put, well, it's really not practically feasible to put the same amount of memory, hard drive, and processing power inside of an amplifier that you have in a computer. So why put the brains in the amplifier? The amplifier's only job is to amplify a signal. So if you're putting the effects and other things like that in your computer and using Bluetooth and using your amplifier, I keep pointing to the amplifier behind me that's behind the curtain, then essentially you're doing the same thing. My daughter has her cell phone and she has this little JBL Bluetooth wireless speaker, and it's got fantastic sound for a small speaker like that. It sounds great. So it's just a larger scale of that. So you're just going to use the computer for the apps and things. Then you're going to have a Bluetooth receiving amplifier that all it does is receive the signal and then amplify it and make it louder. So basically, it's like a cabinet of speakers that you then have inputs into. And
I definitely agree with it from that perspective. It's the my favorite example of technology where they didn't think about things that way is the TV VCR. And kids, ask your parents. VCR is a video cassette recorder where they had tape that went between two wheels, and as it spun by, it would play the image on the television. But they had the combo TV VCR, right? And one or the other works fine. I want to get a new VCR or whatever back in the day. I could, but the TV VCR combo came out, and people jumped on those. But then you find out, the monitor goes out, the TV part goes out, and then you just have a VCR. You've got to try and figure out if you want to keep that around and have a TV that's dead sitting next to a TV that's live, so you could play things on the VCR portion that's left over, or the VCR part goes out. Why would you stick those two things together? The computer components inside of an amp kind of feels like it's the same thing. Go ahead and split those apart. It's easier to do, and let those be modular, and you upgrade pieces at a time.
yeah, it's just a natural evolution of guitar technologies. Like, I don't know if you've ever heard of Line 6, but Line 6 has for a long time made a great series of amplifiers that are totally solid state digital technology, and they can simulate just about any sound of any amp out there. Any of your favorite artists, you can used to be able to say, I want to sound like this artist, and then you just push a button on a Line 6 device, and then boom, your guitar would sound like that artist's guitar. So that was a great feature. So music technology is evolving, and that's a great thing.
Cool.
And now on to something that's not such a great thing. Shout outs to some people we lost very recently. You want to talk
Ron
about?
Glass.
Yeah, Firefly's Shepard, and also I believe he was on WKRP in Cincinnati. Um, I can't remember the name of his character back then, but he had the coolest character on the show.
Only we
Um,
had an internet to look things up.
if only we had an internet to look things up. Only 71 years old. That's pretty young, so that's kind of sad. Um, oh, I cannot remember his DJ character's name on WKRP.
Almost have it.
Are you working on it?
I'm working on it.
All right,
Why don't you
I'll have
talk
to fill
about
time.
Mrs. Brady?
Mrs. Brady, Florence Henderson. Yeah, that's another person that we lost recently. So it's kind of sad for me because she was I guess, like my first TV mom. What the hell was that?
Oh, that was my computer. Sorry.
I was like, is that going to bing every time I go back in time and think about Mrs. Brady? I'm going to hear that sound. It takes me back.
If only.
So my wife was pointing out to me that a lot of us growing up, that was our sort of vision of a family on TV, and now all of the grown-ups from that show are all dead. She was the last one. Mr. Brady died back in the 80s during the AIDS crisis. Alice died from a freak accident, breaking her leg and getting a clot or something like that within the last couple of years. Sam the Butcher died some time ago, so that just leaves the kids now. They're all on their own. So Ron Glass, what was his character's name on WKRP?
So I don't see him on WKRP. He was on Barney Miller.
Ah, son of a bitch. You're
Uh,
right.
Detective Ron Harris on Barney
Yeah.
Miller.
Wow, can we edit this whole section out now? Because it's obvious my Alzheimer's is kicking in. Um,
What are we talking about?
yeah, exactly. That's a
Yeah,
little
so he's
bit.
Barney Miller, The New Odd Couple. Let's see, what else? He did an episode of Twilight Zone. Perry Mason. Oh my God, Perry Mason. Let's
Yeah,
see,
the irony
Rhythm and
is,
Blues.
we were just talking last night, my daughter and I, about Netflix and how much we love Netflix. And would it be great if they decided to pick up Firefly? And my daughter goes, I think that ship has sailed. I think it's a little too late now because most of the people are a lot older. Casey looks kind of old, or I always call him Adam Baldwin looks a lot older now. And
Well, I'm just going to stop you right there. They cannot bring Firefly back, even before Ron Glass died. I love him, but I mean, he died. Ron Glass's character died in the show, but even worse, we lost Wash.
oh, when did we lose?
He died in the Serenity movie. Spoilers,
Oh,
guys. It's
that's
been
right.
yeah, which always so sad about it. But
They could do like an X-Men type reboot where they just ignore that.
Serenity didn't happen.
X-Men 4, I guess, tried to erase what happened in X-Men 3. Yeah, that never happened. We're gonna have to fix all of Brett Ratner's crap that he ruined from the third movie. Right now, I'd like to take this opportunity to send out a heartfelt apology to Tim Reed, who played Venus Flytrap on WKRP in Cincinnati. Oh,
I I tell you what, I'll save you. I'll save you right now, and redirect the hate back on me. I'm going to tell you a joke. It's a joke that every time I think about the demise of Wash, and my son hates it every time I tell it. But I'm just going to lay it out here. All right. So, how do reavers clean their spears when they get dirty?
I don't know. How do they clean them?
They put them through the wash.
Ah, that's terrible. Terrible.
So whatever I do next, just don't hate me.
You're getting hate mail from both of our fans now. That's it.
Yeah.
Both Doug and Ryan and I guess Nate. That's three. Do we have three now?
we have, I think we have 3 people that listen.
Yes.
I know.
On
All
this
right,
rock,
so-
I will build my army.
Let's move on to games.
Games.
Just a couple of quick notes. Not anything long, real long discussions. But No Man's Sky, kind of a big flop this year. It was the big hopeful, and then it flopped mostly because the hype was just so high, and then they really didn't deliver, and then they just shut up and they clammed up, and nobody knows where they went, and people just started piling on them afterwards, and they didn't respond to anybody.
Where's the company that created this based at?
So, Australia, I believe that Hello Games is the company, and I I know the developers are Australian, but I don't know if they're based there or if they're in California. I think they're in Australia, but um, yeah, they just shut down. And then, so recently, they finally sent out a message, and they're going to be putting out an update sometime this week for No Man's Sky to add base building. So one of the features they talked about during launch or during the pre-launch that they wanted to be able to add, um, they're finally going to go ahead and do it. So I'm not sure if that means that um, they're going to get back to a regular schedule of delivering content, or if this was just all the developers quit and they had this thing halfway done and two of them stayed around to get it done and they just gave it to the fans because they felt like they owed them. I don't know. Hopefully we get more. Hopefully No Man's Sky gets to be something more than it is.
Well, I hope it's in place by Christmas because, as I told you earlier, we went Walmart shopping late on Black Friday, and I saw it for $25 in a bin, and I told my wife, "Here, get me this for Christmas." So that's what I'm getting for Christmas. Yay, yay
So,
me!
I mean, for $25, I think it's worth $25. It's worth it just for it kind of. So even though you're not building anything, it kind of feels like Minecraft with a space game mixed together. You're just running around, exploring things, um, landing on planets, checking things out. You get in there and you play around, you have a little bit of fun, then you put it down, and you don't ever think about it again. Which is kind of how my son and I did it. I streamed a little bit right in the beginning when it first launched, and then played a little bit. I was gonna play and try and record the whole playthrough going to the center of the galaxy. I got about 2 sessions in and then just got on to something else.
Well, I'm kind of looking forward to giving it some time. I need something to get me off of Fallout 4. For God's sakes, I killed like 4 hours yesterday morning playing Fallout 4.
Well, it could be worse. I mean, I spent the last 2 days or so playing through Skyrim. So, Skyrim on Steam, if you've had all the DLC, they gave you the I forget what the deluxe edition or the the special edition. They just re-released Skyrim with updated graphics and all that kind of stuff. And if you've already bought Skyrim and you already bought all the mods from the original version, they just give you the special edition for free, which I thought was an awesome deal from Bethesda or Steam or the combination of the two of them. However, they had that worked out.
I loved Skyrim. I played the crap out of that when it came out. I thoroughly enjoyed it. The irony is that I ran right out and got Elder Scrolls Online when it came out.
Oh,
I couldn't get into it. I don't know why. I tried it and couldn't get into it.
I can tell you why you can't get into it. It's a terrible game.
Maybe that was it.
It's god awful. I mean, it was kind of a try and grab at the whole MMO thing. Everybody wanted to be the next World of Warcraft, and they're like, "We're Skyrim. We're the Elder Scrolls people. Everyone loves Skyrim. If we just put Elder Skyrim online, then you can play online with your friends." Except the thing I liked about Elder Scrolls, or Skyrim, or any of the other games, was I didn't pay attention to plot or story or any of that. I just started walking in a direction, and I would find caves and dragons and whatever, and just explore.
Yeah, it was just
I
so
still
much
don't know
fun.
what the story of that game is.
There's a whole world to. I did follow the storyline in that pretty closely in that one, which is funny for me because usually I don't. Usually I do what you said, which is how I started out with Fallout 4. I just went out exploring, and only now am I sort of level building quickly by going through all of the. I had a crap ton of missions lined up that I didn't explore any further than making the initial connection, and now I'm just whipping through those and leveling up like crazy. So with Skyrim, I followed the storyline. I got my shouting powers and did all of that, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. So I'm looking forward to the next edition if there is one. If they didn't go bankrupt from the Elder Scrolls Online and
sure
kill
they
the
didn't.
franchise. If they haven't killed that franchise and they come out with another one, I'll probably line up and get it. And the other thing I like is the fact you don't have to interact with people online. You can explore by yourself. It's you time. You get on there. You don't need anybody else. It's nice if you have a companion in game, even if they do disappear half the time because they can't jump rocks as good as you do, and then you just don't see them for a while.
Well, you can't be the special Dovahkiin, the one warrior in all of history that can get dragon powers or whatever, if everyone in the entire universe is that special one, magic dragon warrior.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was just a bad idea.
Yeah. So, Star Citizen, they're sharing their schedule with the public. They're opening up Jira and MS Project. Is that?
Yeah, they had, I think they had Jira, MS Project, and they had one other piece. I'd have to dig up my email for the link to go to it.
Am I going to have to chair the CCB too? Is that they just?
You do not have to chair the CCB for this one.
Right.
However, they're just trying to open up and give their fans some insight on what they're working on and the progress of it. So they're not saying, here are the dates we're going to make these things. They're saying, here's our next milestone. Here are the tasks that need to be done to reach the milestone. And when we do the milestone, we'll put out another, version increment build. You could follow along and see what kind of issues we're running into, what kinds of things we're doing, how long it takes to do, whatever, part of this. And so I think it's really neat for a game that's purely crowdsourced like this. This is something that if a studio is going to come in and fund a big AAA title, they would demand as well. They want to know what the schedule is. They want to know how things are going. They want to be able to go in and track it remotely. And so they're treating their the crowdsourced partners as if they're publishers, because they are. They're their publishing arm, and so they're giving them the same respect that they would give any other publisher. They still have more control over their game than if they had a publisher coming in, but they're giving the fans who are giving them all this money and allowing them to do it the ability to look into it.
It's a good move because it should silence the critics and the rabble rousers who are complaining that why isn't this movie out? It's 2 years late, and
Exactly.
Yeah. All right.
So let's move in to spoiler territory.
So whatever I do next, just don't hate me.
So that's the our spoiler warning here. So we're going to talk about the last week's episode of Westworld, and not so much about the episode itself. Maybe we'll get into some of the details, but we wanted to talk about a couple of our tinfoil hat theories on that one, and then we wanted to talk a little bit about the last episode of season 3 of Black Mirror, Hated in the Nation. It's an hour-and-a-half episode. It feels like a movie, but we'll get there.
Yeah. So we don't want to get into too much detail, but Westworld starts off with the sun rising over the desert. Just kidding. So I noticed, it seems to me, that Man in Black is starting to struggle a little more at Harris as he gets closer to the center of the maze. When he was on the outside of the maze trying to find his way in, he was invincible. He could take out an entire town. Nobody could touch him. Since he's gotten on this trail and he's working his way in toward the center, he seems to lose his invincibility, right to the point where James Marsden's character, what's his character's name? Teddy.
Oh, Teddy.
Teddy just out and out kicks his ass, and
he does.
Looks kind of painful. it just seems like he's gotten this is the second time now where he's the last time he got shanghaied or tied up or whatever by a whole army, so that was sort of understandable. This time is one guy, so and a guy that pretty much up till this point he's always had the upper hand on.
And
So
he's kind of been at death's door.
yeah, so it seems like things have turned for him a little bit, and I'm wondering if it's sort of I've made the reference to the Goonies, whereas they got in closer and closer to the center of the earth or whatever. The one kid's gadgets actually started functioning better and better the closer they got.
Yeah, and
Um,
so that reference for people that didn't that weren't a part of our pre-show, uh, Todd had excuse me, comment about Goonies and the character Data and all of his gadgets. And when he was on the surface, when he was just out in the regular world, his gadgets sucked. None of them worked right. They were kind of a work in progress, but they were mostly just a disaster. But as they got closer and closer to this pirate ship, his gadgets started working better and better. The jaws of life, the slick shoes,
yeah.
the the
So
high beam lights, all that kind of stuff.
so to me, it's sort of like the opposite of that. As the man in black gets more and more in toward the center, his gadgets are working less and less. So I thought that was my interesting take on it. Um, Something in my sort of suspicion. Your theory for what's going on in the show is much more interesting to me, and I'm not sure I buy it, but go ahead and make your case.
So, it's you brought up the fight where Teddy uh, and the woman that they rescue uh, are there, and Teddy hits him in the face, and the man in black says something to her. He says that I guess Ford just doesn't like to get rid of a pretty face. We've actually seen her a couple of times before. I don't know if you've recognized her from anywhere. Did you recognize that character, the woman?
No, she looked familiar, but occasionally I see people who look familiar on there.
So this ties back into my crackpot theory. My crackpot theory, just putting it out there so people can tell where the hell I'm going, is that William, the white hat from the story running around with Dolores, is actually the younger version of the Man in Black, and that it's multiple time periods. So, um, if you remember, William saw this woman once before when he first went to Westworld, when he was going into the character creation stage of the system. He was greeted by a blonde woman who helped him make choices about his character that he was going to portray in Westworld.
Yeah,
That
I
same
remember that.
that same actress also appeared in the Buried City. She was one of the people with a parasol, and then now she is also this woman who is working with um, what's the guy's name, Wyatt.
Yeah, with Wyatt on Wyatt's
So
crew.
she's one of Wyatt's crew, and she's the one that with Teddy knocks out the Man in Black, and he comments on her being a pretty face that Ford just didn't want to get rid of. So it could back up the theory as well. Man in Black has seen her a number of times over the years, but the first time that he saw her was when he, for the very first time, was suiting up with his white hat, getting ready to go into the system. So I think that Westworld has a couple of different timelines, two main timelines. There's the young William, and then there's Man in Black William. Young William is the brother to I forget that guy's name.
Oh
The
yeah,
the asshole.
yeah. The guy who is just there to get laid and shoot him up.
Yeah. So he's going to marry um, that guy's sister, and he's going to be part of the company. They talk about investing in the Westworld project, and then Man in Black is a dedicated family man who's lost his wife and lost contact with his daughter, who is a very important man who has risen to be the head of the company that he works for, and obviously has some pull with um, Westworld itself. If you remember in a few earlier episodes, the security guy, uh, there was a request for explosives, and when he saw who made the request, he said, "That man gets anything he wants."
Yeah.
So this could all be, it could all fit in, and I could just be looking for crazy, things to support my theory, but it could all fit in that William is the Man in Black.
So they talk about in the Men in Black's timeline, the latest timeline, an event that happened 30 years earlier, the catastrophe that happened. Do
Hmm?
you think that William's story could be leading up to that catastrophe? Do
It
you
could
think
be.
possibly it could result in maybe one of the, like Dolores or somebody killing his soon-to-be brother-in-law?
That could be it, and that could definitely be how he takes more of a major focus in the company as he goes forward, as he marries that guy's sister, uh, and then comes into the business. Uh, So that could be it. It could be that the AI are starting to go off the rails, off their loops, and that's the event that happens 30 years in the past. It could be a number of things. It could be that Ford and then the story director just butt heads enough that one of them sabotages the other one, and lives are lost in the park. We don't really know at this point. They've got 2 episodes to kind of wrap it up and figure it out, and I'm really excited to see what they do. Um, so, yeah, the last episode had a few things in there, but mostly it was set up again. Whereas the previous episode, we had so many big reveals.
Yeah, and we still don't know who they are hatching down in Ford's secret laboratory. That's one thing they did eliminate. Last time we talked, we had a theory that they were going to that the lady that they killed, um,
The director,
the director, that maybe that was her, director of QA, I guess she was,
right?
that was going to be her, that they were going to replace her. Nope, they just threw her body out there. So it's like it must be somebody bigger than her if it's really a surprise.
Well, and that's something we haven't talked about here on the show for Westworld. Super crackpot, tinfoil hat theories. How many people in the park are actually hosts? Are all of the people there in the park hosts? Even the guests, are they hosts? And is Ford the only one who's human? Is Ford a host?
Is Ford a host, and what's his partner's name?
Uh,
Bernard or
Bernard, not Bernard.
no?
Bernard's
Oh,
the actor, or the guy who is his puppet. Um,
oh,
Starts with an A. Alfred? No, not Alfred.
wow, we suck.
We do suck.
Yeah, so maybe he is the guy at the center of the maze. He's the only living person there, and everyone else is hosts, even Ford. That would be interesting, but probably not.
Arnold. Arnold.
Arnold. How could we forget Arnold? Arnold's Diner from Happy Days. Yeah.
So, so yeah. Is Arnold running things in the center of the park, and Ford is the one that got killed, and he just got replaced? We don't know. It would make a lot of things make sense if Ford was a host. How does he stop all the other hosts without any vocal commands? And he does that a couple of times. That's a neat trick that he does, where he does something and everyone freezes all the way around him. But they kind of do that whenever the guys come in to replace a host or take somebody out, they freeze everybody in place.
Yeah. But not Tandy Newton. Tandy Newton. Nothing freezes her. She keeps on moving.
I wonder what that would be like if there was a guest upstairs in the brothel and they freeze the whole thing. in mid
Coitus?
act. Yes.
I have just too many jokes I could make about that would probably get us the other ratings. So
All right, we'll
so maybe we should
steer away from that.
move on to Hated in the Nation.
Yeah, so I think that we've had enough crackpot theories for
All right.
Westworld.
We'll
All
crack
right, so
more
Hated in
pots
the
next
Nation.
time.
What's that?
So we'll crack more pots next time.
Right.
Hated in the Nation. One
So-
of the things that we talked about with this was just the length of it, because we were talking about, I'd mentioned how Netflix and BBC and other networks like that are ruining network TV for me. And this is a good example because you don't know how many episodes you're getting from season to season when it's coming from the BBC. It's however many episodes it takes for them to tell their story or until their creative well runs dry, or maybe till their budget runs out. Likewise, you don't know how long each episode is going to be. It could be an hour, it could be an hour and 10 minutes. You know, it's however long it takes the storyteller to tell their story. And so the product becomes what's more important, you know, producing good quality product. And you mentioned before, this is like an hour and 38 minutes, like its own sci-fi movie, basically. It's a long episode. It didn't seem like a long episode because it was a really good episode.
Yeah, it was. It is like a movie. They didn't have. I mean, they had a few big name actors. We mentioned. I think just between the two of us, we were trying to decide if the one spook from the British government was the same guy who plays in Doctor Strange, and he is. He also played in The Martian. Andy Weir's The Martian. He was the head of the JPL group. Get the character's name, but
I'm trying to look up the actor's name because I hate.
it's something Wong.
I thought that was the name of his character in Doctor Strange.
It's also the character's name is Wong, but his last name is Wong. It's like
his last name is Clyde Cusato. Wait, that's not him.
no, it's not.
I think IMDb is messing with me here. Oh, wait a minute. Have they had two
Benedict
different
Wong.
Apparently, you're not going to believe this. There was a Doctor Strange movie before this Doctor Strange movie. This is the second Doctor Strange movie they've had. They did one back in, I don't know, 1978. They did a Doctor Strange movie.
I'm
Wow.
sure that was lovely.
I'm sure that was just awesome. The photo for the movie just looks fantastic.
All right, so I've got the IMDb page up.
Okay.
His name is Benedict Wong,
Benedict Wong.
which it's great. Benedict
So-
Wong, Benedict Cumberbatch.
So there's two Wongs?
So his name is Benedict Wong, and he plays a character called Wong in Doctor Strange.
So there's two Wongs that don't make it right. No. Sorry. I'm going to hell for that. I am the queen of filth. Bow down. Oh, man.
So yeah, Benedict Wong. He yeah.
I've gotten us off track. I'm sorry.
You sure did.
I am punchy. Hated in the Nation. Let's get back on track. Hated in the Nation. He has a small part in that, too.
Hi, folks. This is Grizzled Geeks. We've got a special episode for you tonight. We talk about Hated in the Nation. Hated in the Nation. BBC. They do longer or shorter shows. Kind of like movies. They're great. Yeah. So he was the only big name star that I recognized. I thought that I recognized. I brought it around. I thought that I recognized one of the other detectives, the younger computer forensic type detective.
Right. The blonde detective.
Yeah. In something, but I can't actually place it. Just gonna bring up the episode, see if I could pull her name. Uh, but yeah, so the whole episode, the main kind of moral dilemma that they're talking about to get us onto some intelligible talk about this is this idea of the internet and the whole anonymous troll hateful behavior. And there is this tag, this hashtag that people can post death to.
Death 2,
Uh,
yes.
they death to. They give the name of the person and they post their picture. And if they do that, and whoever gets the most hits under that tag in the day gets targeted by these autonomous drone bees. And
They've
the
had
drone
to
bees,
They've
yeah.
created an entire army of something I thought was kind of a little far-fetched, but also interesting, since bees are dying out supposedly for some reason, and you need them to pollinate crops. These people invented these little drone bees that actually can go out and create hives and reproduce like real bees. And so now they've completely covered Great Britain with these little autonomous bees.
Are you ready to be derailed real quick?
Oh yeah, sure.
So I told you the character's name is Blue in the show, Blue
Right.
Coulson.
Yes.
And you'll kick yourself that you didn't recognize her. She's the waif from Game of
Waif.
Thrones. Yes,
Faye Marseille. I just saw that. I pulled that up. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. That's the waif? She looks completely different.
she does. She does. All right, so these drones get us back on topic. Uh, these drones have taken over for bees because kind of pulling from real world topics like they are today. It's this technology what if type thing. They've added these drone bees because the bee population across the world are still dying out. They don't understand why, but the bees are necessary to pollinate flowers and keep vegetation alive and pollinating and surviving so that we as a species can continue to survive as well. So they've got these bees doing that, but somebody's hacking these bees to kill the targets.
These are the ABCs of me. And these bees are vicious. And they're very relentless. You can't seem to get anywhere away from these bees that they don't get at you once they've targeted you. They'll come through the glass, they'll come through the vents. That was something I'm sitting as I'm watching, I'm like trying to think of ideas of where you could go to get away from these bees, but they're very tricky.
Well, and the method of death in these from these bees is just gruesome. They fly into your ear or up your nose or into your eye, and they drill down into your skull, into your brain, and they drill and they target the pain center in your brain, so you're in agonizing pain. So much so that the first character kills herself to make the pain stop. To get targeted, she kills herself to make the pain stop.
So in the beginning, it is kind of a mystery because they don't tell you what killed her. Initially, you just know that she's killed herself, and they're looking at the husband, the I want to say movie, the show takes a turn in a sort of different direction, and now that we've ruined that for anybody who's going to watch it,
Hey,
we did
said
say
we were spoiling
spoilers.
it.
That's right.
I think we warned anybody who's going to watch this.
Yeah. So I thought that was really interesting how they did that. So it started off as a detective thing, a who done it, and then they eventually arrive at these bees, and it goes from one bee assassin to eventually, when they get somebody who's been targeted and they try to take them to a safe house. The guy who is doing this decides, well, fine, I don't have to send one bee, I can send all the bees, and that was
Takes over a hive at one point,
yeah.
and then they try and lock him out of the system, and then he just takes over all of the hives in Britain.
Yeah, and what's really interesting is when they finally figure out who the guy is, one of the detectives decides it would be, so one of the things about this, the hashtag, what is it, Death2, is it's the people go on the internet and they vote, and whoever gets the high vote gets killed. I think you mentioned that. So this detective gets the idea that once he gets the guy's name, he's going to put a death to out there with that guy's name in it. And I thought the show was going to go in a completely different direction at that point. He agonized over it. Should I do this? Should I not do it? And I'm sitting there going, oh, I would do it in a heartbeat. I'd call everybody I knew and say, hey, this guy's been killing people. Let's get this guy's name on the list.
Meanwhile, I was screaming at the television on the treadmill, screaming at the television, "Don't do it! Don't do it!"
So, the twist that you find out in the end is that he had somebody he loved who was basically bullied online by people like this, by these trolls, these internet trolls, and they killed themselves or tried to kill themselves. So he's set out this mission to pay everybody back. So he's collecting this massive database of everybody on the internet who's ever used the hashtag death2. And so his final coup d'etat at the end is, if you've ever done a death2 hashtag, including this detective, he sends out all of the bees in Great Britain to kill all of these people. And at the end of the movie, you know, they're in a hearing and they're talking to the lead detective on the case, and they mentioned a figure somewhere in the hundreds of thousands of people who were killed by the bees in that. It was, you know, not your happy endings, but it was like watching a sci-fi movie, like a Stephen King movie almost, where at the end, you know, things didn't work out so great.
Well, so one of the twists you kind of glossed over a little bit. So how these bees were targeting people, right? So the original designer was saying, well, they don't have a camera in there. They just, you know, sense patterns, and that's all they do, and they send messages back, and they behave just like bees in that they share information with each other to find a path to get to the flowers and the pollen or whatever for the hive. But the British government had funded this project, and as a stipulation, they had decided that the bees also had to have facial recognition, so that they could track targets of interest or stop people of interest from doing bad things.
Bee spies.
And so, yeah, they are bee spies. They're Big Brother, you know, all around you, literally, everywhere you go. And so they take advantage of this, and the last target, the third day's target for the bees themselves. So this is over the course of 3 days they do this, and the hundreds of thousands of people that hop on this death tube. On the third day, people start to make the connection, or it's the third or fourth day, they make the connection that it's the bees and the death 2 tag. It gets out into the news, and people are mad at the British Prime Minister for something, and so they start putting his name into the hat. And he's the number one guy. And so, of course, he's got all the top men, you know, cracking down to figure out what this is and get this thing solved, which is when we find out about the whole facial recognition thing. And then they write a counter program, and because they're trying to save this guy's life, they're going to take back over the network and then shut it down. But in taking over the network, it triggers trap code in there that activates it and goes after all of these people that have done the Death 2 tag.
Yeah, that's right. He left a burnt hard drive behind when they went to his lair, and when they deciphered what was in the hard drive, and that's what they used to try to crack his code and get control of all the bees, they inadvertently set off the mass kill. And it was his little hidden honeypot, so to speak.
Yeah.
The poison pill. So ultimately they were their own undoing. So really, really twisty, well thought out episode with a lot of different sort of moral stories going on in it, and just good stuff, you know, good for Netflix and the BBC, and the acting in these shows is superb, the writing is excellent, and it's like you're just getting movie quality shows, and really enjoyed that one. I wasn't going to talk too much about the other one that I did watch that I mentioned to you was the Waldo one, but that wasn't the one that really disappointed me. The one that disappointed me the most that I watched was, I don't know if you saw it, but there was this lady who wakes up and she doesn't know where she is. She has no memory.
Oh,
And
that's like White Bear or something.
White Bear, that's it. And so it was kind of interesting for a little while until when you get to the ending, it was the first episode that I'd seen that was absolutely ludicrous because she was a child killer. And so what they've decided to do is every day she wakes up with wiped memory and they torture her ass all day long with a massive array of actors and people who chase her around and scare the hell out of her, and then they reveal to her at the end for a live audience what she's done, why they're doing this, and then they wipe her brain and start all over again the next morning. That is pretty damn elaborate punishment requiring, 100 people and all this land and all this just to make one person suffer every day. That was the part
So
I thought was a little bit ludicrous.
you don't think that if the public, um, if we had a program like this, that a particularly gruesome killer of some sort would be able to be punished like this, but in order to do that, you would have to go to the facility, and as long as there was interest, as long as there were people there that were willing to participate in this punishment, uh, and that's all it took to be able to set this up, that they would do that every single day, that people here in America wouldn't go and do that. I know
I
that they would.
I can't imagine. Well, I guess the people who run it would have to be interchangeable because I can't imagine every day. What'd you do today? Oh, I tortured Jenny. What are you gonna do tomorrow? That's my life's ambition. I wake up every day, I go torture Jenny, and that's how I'm gonna spend the rest of my life. Me and the other 50 people on my crew. That's what we live for every day. It's not too expensive. It's too elaborate. I mean, it was a wild ending, and it wasn't at all what I was expecting. So it was a great twist, as long as you didn't think too deeply into it. And then at the very end, when I thought about it, I'm like, all right. So the whole thing is an elaborate charade to just keep torturing this woman every day and wiping her memory, rinse and repeat. It was a little far fetched for me. It's
So
kind
so yeah, I'll give you that that one's the most amount of effort to go wrong. That you actually have to put in daily effort to make it go that horribly wrong for that person. Whereas a lot of the other episodes, the moral lessons are effortless. You don't have to think about it. Um, you just downvote the person, for example, and you
yeah.
don't think about what kind of day they're having. You just downvote them. The whole point is you're not thinking about the consequences of that, at a global level. The whole getting blacklisted from White Christmas. You're
Yeah,
not
that
thinking about it. You're just you shouldn't have to. People shouldn't have to deal with you, and you shouldn't be able to deal with people because you're blacklisted. They don't think about the consequences because it's really easy. Oh well, of course you shouldn't be able to.
yeah. So I think White Bear was the very last episode that I watched. So I think I have one more to go, and then I'm done from season one. Um, it's funny that the very first two episodes I thought were the two weakest episodes in the entire series because after the Prime Minister one, I wasn't really, it was kind of funny. It was kind of ironic. It was the least forward thinking as far as weird future and things like that. There wasn't, it didn't really, if something had happened today, they could do something like that. You could imagine, it didn't require
Yeah,
any
it
sort
could
of
have
weird
happened today.
technology. The second one was the most far in the future, weird, off the wall, alternative universe one, the bicycle one. And that one had such a dark ending that I didn't watch another episode for a long time until you and I started talking about it until Netflix put out season three. It was so dark I didn't want to go back and watch anymore. Um,
That first season was so dark.
yeah. So I'm glad that I started with season three, which so far, after watching them, I think, in my opinion, was the best season. And then I think season two was probably the second best season, and then season one was probably the weakest season because it didn't seem to have a unified theme yet. I think by season two and season three, they had sort of a unified theme of recurring commonalities that they would play on variations of. You and I have talked about the implants in the head and augmented reality and things like that. They play
They're
around a lot
definitely
with those.
Yeah, they're definitely going back to the well for certain technology, almost to the point where it could be a single unified universe, maybe at different points in time. Um, but it could be the same tech, as the tech rises and falls in popularity, or people realize the mistake. Maybe we cut that part out of society or whatever. But yeah, it could be the same world almost.
Yeah, so those are all my thoughts on Black Mirror for this week, and probably that'll pretty much do it for me going forward for Black Mirror. I think I've covered them all
Well, until they've come out with a new season,
until they come
I
out
think
with,
we're pretty much done.
which is the downside of the BBC schedule is it could be, and Netflix's schedule, it could be next spring, it could be next fall, it could be next Christmas. We're not really guaranteed a schedule. It's sort of like on Star Citizen's timeline. It'll be out when they're done with it.
Well, I still prefer that. I'd rather have, one season every year or two that's excellent than just regurgitated shit on a regular basis.
Yeah, today my son and I were just trying to slog through Supergirl season one as fast as we could. There's so many episodes in that. I think it's like 26 episodes, 25 episodes. And so we're trying to get caught up for the big crossover event with Flash and Arrow, which isn't going to happen. So I've been making fun of my son for sitting down with his sisters and watching Gilmore Girls, which got released on Netflix, sort of the reunion of Gilmore Girls. And I've been giving him kind of a hard time about that. So the fact that we then had some girl time today to sit down and watch Supergirl together.
There you go.
So,
Like a father and son should.
like a father and son should. Get out the nail polish, do each other's nails, Ay, Chihuahua.
Anyway,
So anyway,
yeah, let's wrap it up here. So, I'm Mitch,
and I'm Todd.
and we are the Grizzled Geeks. Thank you, and good night.